I'll call to order the Town of West Newbury Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. And I will start out by congratulating Mr. Phillips and express my thanks to him for running a write-in campaign. Glad to have you on board, Rob.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
You may want to let people know about his status, though, because I think some people have just joined.
Yes. Oh, well, Rob hasn't raised his right hand for the specific office of elected planning board member.
Not sworn in.
So technically, he is an observer here. And if we have any votes tonight, he won't be able to vote. All right. So first item on the agenda is Major Boyd Drive, and I see that Mr. Crow is here. Mr. Crow, I understand you want to modify the definitive subdivision approval. How do you want to modify it, sir?
So the modification request started with your highway department. He initiated the request that the landscaping in the islands be removed and made to be a single tree with grass, primarily for reasons of maintenance and, even more importantly, probably snow plowing. These roads, cul-de-sacs are difficult to plow. There's huge amounts of snow that gets pushed and around and makes it a little bit difficult to not damage things. And so
Is
also
this the
watching-
proposal that I'm seeing on screen there?
Exactly.
Did everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
it was very distracting. I wasn't sure how
Yeah,
to
be
continue
careful, Katrina.
talking through that.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
we
that's
go.
better.
There we are.
Well,
Okay,
what
so
did you all
what-
see?
So
What's
the
growing into
original
this?
idea, I'm looking at the original idea, and you had a number of shrubberies and whatnot. And
Yeah,
they
I'm
basically want
opposed. Yeah, this is not a good idea.
Why
which
do you
one
think-
is not a good idea?
I think we should have, we approved the original plan for some shrubs. This is going to be a naked piece of grass with a tree in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
this
not
was
a
the
fan
original-
either. We've had this discussion with our highway maintenance people in the past, and they complain about it. But if I imagine what they want to do is they want to come down that long straight thing and just pile all the
Dump
snow.
the
in
snow
the
there.
middle.
yeah, they did.
No.
The cul-de-sac. Yeah, exactly.
I do have a letter from Butch Hills, our highway superintendent, that he gave me this afternoon. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Dated 5/6/2025, to all concerned. I made a site visit to the island at Major Boyd Drive today. It was nice to see that the work has already been completed. The updated version of a maple tree in the center and loam and grass seed makes the most sense. It will be easy to manage and take care of.
But is he taking care of it? I don't understand. Isn't there a homeowners association? I'm confused.
The town will be the owner of that in the future if we accept the road.
Okay.
So I did receive also an email from an abutter, not someone who lives in the subdivision, someone who is an abutter to the development. She wrote a paragraph, and she included in it, if nothing else, the poor tree should have a screen or other protection around the trunk and some sort of maintenance plan for its early years. So maybe Mr. Crow can talk about the maintenance this year. And I think Butch did tell me that neighbors have water hoses running across the street to the island right now.
Well, God, I don't know. I mean, if I were living there, I'd much prefer to have the bushes and the benches, and I imagine it would be a lovely place to kind of sit back and chill. But if it's just bare grass, and if they pile all the snow there, the snow will be full of road salt, and that'll kill all the grass off too.
Of course, it'll kill the bushes if we do the bushes.
Yeah, unless they just take a little extra effort and push the
Exactly.
snow off to the side.
Right.
Well, but then it may be in people's front yards.
Well, of
And
course it
that's-
will.
Well, it might be in the right of way, but that's true for all of us.
We
Yes.
all have
Get to
snow.
the end of your
and-
driveway, there is some snow there because
Yeah.
town plows into the right of way.
Well,
Now,
the plowing, because we obviously, it's been done
You've been
this
doing it.
past winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Difficulty with plowing isn't even so much how much they push in the middle. It's even difficult around the sides because there are two rather large driveways at the end of this cul-de-sac, and you can't push snow into those, so they're forever moving snow in directions that cause probably bigger banks around the edges than in the middle. But the other thing that is happening, and I've been watching it for the last several months, is that trucks, pickup trucks, the dump trucks, all the trucks that come in and out of any street are more than lazy in their driving techniques, and they drive over it
Hmm.
continually. They just
Yeah.
cut their corners too sharp, and there's, forever big indentations, which if there's bushes there, people will be running over them. If anyone ever, literally put a moving van down there, I mean, obviously I've had a lot of big equipment in there. And without anything there, they took liberties to not worry about where they drove. But again, I didn't initiate this change. I was just trying to
Yeah.
accommodate, was requested from preferences because he was indicating that they're not that good about doing regular maintenance and mowing if they're taking charge of this, which, I can easily have the homeowners association mow on a weekly basis so that it's not a hindrance. But,
Well,
I'm not sure.
I think if there's those bushes there in the original plan, I think that people with pickup trucks and moving vans and whatnot are much less likely to drive over the center.
Right, they won't
And,
be able to.
Yeah.
and if the homeowners are gonna be, mowing that in the summer, maintaining it in the summer, which I suspect they would do. I mean, if I were in the area, I wouldn't have any problem going over there. I don't know.
Mike, are those the 5 trees around the outside of the circle in place? Are they baby
Yes.
trees or big
All
trees?
of the street trees were planted last fall.
Okay,
And, with which Butch's supervision about where they got located, so they're all in. All the stone bounds are on the property. The only thing left to do really is final paving on the road.
mhm.
Mr. Chair, could I say 2 things? First of all, doesn't this board rely heavily on their highway superintendent for advice for street acceptance? And so if he is asking that this be done, I wonder what his advice will be when Mr. Crow tries to get his roadway accepted at town meeting. And also, in the future, in the other towns I've worked in, we've always required as one of the conditions that the turnaround island be owned by a homeowners association and that the homeowners surrounding it are responsible for its maintenance and upkeep. So in the future, that'd probably be a good idea. So we didn't have to deal with landscaped islands and taking over the maintenance of them.
I thought this was under the
Yeah,
homeowners
so did I.
association.
The other thing I wonder is if we had gotten any input from the highway department at the time of the approval, but that may have been before Butch's time, so that would be a change of,
Well, I definitely know that before Butch's time, at the end of Bailey's Lane, the highway department insisted on, instead of a cul-de-sac like this, they insisted on a T
Hammerhead, yeah.
section. And I didn't like the idea, figuring that, it would end up being ugly and full of sand and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? I was
fine.
right. I'm
Yeah.
not always right, but I was right about that. It is ugly down there. It looks industrial.
Yeah,
Now, this is a turnaround, and I guess what I'm saying here, Katrina, is I don't like going against the recommendation of anybody in town, but I think there are times when it may be the responsible thing to do it. But so right now I'm disgruntled and I'm leaning towards leaving the landscaping as it is, and then things will shake out as they'll shake out. I think Mr. Crow's original plan is far prettier. And, you know, I mean, you're plowing snow for 3 months out of the year these days. That means you're suffering for 9 months out of the 12 to accommodate a preference for snow plowing that can be taken, the snow plowing can be done in other ways. You got from about 7 o'clock to 12 noon there, that whole upper left part of the circle where you can pile the snow up. But I also respect Mr. Crow's experience because he obviously kept things, or somebody kept things plowed off this last winter, though we didn't have a lot of snow. And I want to hear from the other planning board members.
Yeah, I am totally in favor of keeping it as is. We have another turnaround on Sullivan's Court extension, and I haven't heard complaints down there. It's set up a little differently. It might even have a little bit more room, but I think it's the right thing to do. I respect Mr. Hills, but and I also note that he was not in place with his position
Yeah, when this was approved.
when this was before us.
And Deb,
Well, it seems to me that you would solve the problem of people driving on it if there were shrubs all around it. No one's going to drive on the shrubs, you know, they'll get to be 2 or 3 or 4 feet tall, and that'll be the end of that. They'll have a visual of what to go around. I don't get too
Well,
many.
and the other thought that it's trucks that are doing it. This will be a residential neighborhood street shortly, and there will be a lot less construction and management. I like pretty, but I also like to do what Butch needs us to do. He works very hard, and I'm torn. You know, I'm a fence sitter.
Right?
yeah, I mean, I guess my question for Butch would be, is this your preference, or is this something that you need? And you know, if it's his preference, because it'll make it easier on his plow drivers, then I'm inclined to say no. But if there's some true need,
Yeah, this road will probably be plowed by a private contractor anyway with a small truck.
I would think so, yeah.
Um, they-
That's
they-
what I was
they-
going to say. If you have a small plow in there, they can easily do that. I mean, they do my narrow circular driveway and don't rip out any landscape.
They do my area with, you know, an oversized pickup truck, for God's sakes.
I suppose once the town owns it, Butch could always go and tear out the shrubs if he really hated them. You know,
Let's do that.
Well, I
Yeah,
would like an
does the
answer.
town- yeah.
Isn't this being maintained by a homeowners association?
Yeah, and when you say Katrina, when you say the town owns it, it's the road, it's not the island, correct?
Not the island. They own the road, but
They own the
yeah,
road. Yeah.
Mike, do you know?
That's the island is part of the road, because what
Yeah,
becomes part of the road is the 50-foot wide right of way coming all the way in, including the circle, and everything inside of that is part of that town's right of way property. And the abutters, like everywhere, start 8 or 10 feet off the pavement.
Yeah.
well, I think if it's going to be town owned, then I think Butch gets the call here.
I
I think we
disagree.
need to call a vote, sir.
Absolutely disagree.
Well, I'll make the motion in the positive.
Hey, Ray, could I just ask one question? I had to step away for a minute. So this may have come up, but it's showing 2 benches, and I had emailed Jen yesterday morning. I was concerned if that triggers an accessibility requirement. I believe it does. Katrina, did Jen talk to you about that? Because I asked her
No.
to ask Sam, but I didn't hear anything back.
no,
But I can tell you from other projects, anytime you create a feature like a bench or a table, that does trigger accessibility. So if this becomes public infrastructure, I do see that as being a concern.
And
Well-
so the two votes you would be taking tonight is the first one, you have to decide whether it's a major or minor modification. Once that's done, and if it's minor, then you can vote on it tonight. If it's major, you would have to advertise it and invite abutters.
What if we don't want to just take it up? If there's nothing to modify, I'm telling you, the plan should stand as is.
Well, there is a request before you right now to modify it.
Not if the Mr. Crow withdraws his request.
Or you vote down the request. It's, so just a couple of things, as far as the idea of accessibility and whatever those, I don't believe there's any applicability here. This is not a public building. It's landscaping on a piece of property. There's no necessarily accessibility to, there are with sidewalks, obviously, because they're designed to take traffic of people walking. So I don't really, this doesn't even show an access path into it. It's just got two benches under a tree in the middle of an island with bushes all the way around the rim of it. So the only thing, it's not a huge big deal to me one way or the other. I was just trying to go along with what I was asked that they would
Yeah.
prefer to do.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Crow. I mean, you've always been amenable, and I see that, you're just trying to go along to get along and finish things up. I appreciate that.
So the only thing I would say that, and I don't sure it requires any kind of a modification if I did, let's say, withdraw this request right now, is that the tree has already been modified because I wanted to get it in. And I would prefer to leave it than to take it out and put in a tiny small tree, which is what was there.
So, okay,
The
So-
center of the island showed some sort of a Japanese drooping maple.
and you put in a big tree.
I put a 3-inch caliper maple tree so that it would provide shade. And I think it'll look better anyway, because that's what's around the side of
Absolutely.
the street.
Yeah, so let me take care of that first. So I move that we view having the maple tree in the center of this island as a minor modification.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on this?
I just have a question. There was a tree there in the plan before.
Right.
Why are we voting on another tree?
Different,
Because the
different than
tree
as
was
specified.
specifically enumerated as a small tree, and I can find it on the original landscaping plan, but it was called out as number 1, and number 1 was a
Species change. I don't think it's a big deal.
it was a weeping Yoshino cherry.
Oh,
And Mr. Crow has, in his wisdom, replaced it with a native tree of different character, which is a maple tree.
Okay, fine.
So I want to make sure that we're on the record as approving that change.
Oh, got it.
We
Yep.
haven't voted, but yes.
So the first part of the vote is, do we view the change of trees as a minor modification?
yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
Ray Cook, aye.
Aye. Brian Murphy, aye.
Deb, you got to say your name and then say aye.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
did.
bye. Yeah,
Okay, all right. So it's a minor modification. Now I move that we accept this change.
Well, and specify it is just the tree that's changing, right?
Right now, we're just dealing with the tree. So I move that we accept the maple tree as the change.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
Bardine, aye.
Brian Murphy,
Hamilton,
aye.
Okay, so we got the tree taken care of. The fact that it's now a maple tree, that's all good by us. So now what we're talking about is the other landscaping that was originally called out on the plan very specifically as a bunch of shamrock inkberries and hydrangea and daylilies. Yeah, and I also concur, looking at the original plan here, that there was no path. 2 benches are called out. But the benches are not specified in any detail as far as I can see. So now the question would be, if we continue, is to change this landscaping by eliminating plants specified as 2 through 4 and the 2 benches. And I don't like removing it, but if this street becomes accepted by the town of West Newbury, which Mr. Crowe, have you been telling people buying property that that's the plan?
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
think that if this cul-de-sac ends up being town-owned cul-de-sac, then I agree. After the town accepts it, then the highway department could go in there, tear out the plantings and remove the benches. And because they can do that as town-owned property, that it's silly to waste money putting it in now, only have it torn out later. If it were part of a homeowners association, then I'd fight to keep the landscaping. That's just how I view it. I don't. Ann?
Well, Brian
Right.
had his hand up first. We're going to say the
Brian?
same thing, I'm sure.
Right. This town, the garden club, the native and wild people will be down there marching. We should not be tearing up flowers and whatever in anticipation of somebody plowing a little bit easier. Frankly, this is crazy. We should proceed with the beautification plan that was installed. I'm sure the road's going to be fine.
Excuse me, Ray, you had said something about removing plants. Were you talking about a couple of those bunches so there was a access point?
No, I think what the highway department wants is to have nothing but the tree.
Correct. No, but you had said something about, other than the tree in the center being removed, something about removing benches and some other,
Well, there's on the planting table on your original plans, there are 3 different types of plants that are called out.
correct.
There's 24 shamrock inkberries, 24 hydrangea, and 40 daylilies.
Beautiful. The butterflies and the bees will be happy down there.
Great. I think we should give it a whirl. If it doesn't work, they plow snow on it and it doesn't.
Absolutely. Let's put it in and see how it works.
May not even
Yeah.
snow next winter. We just, this is.
Okay, and right now what I'm inclined to do, I find your arguments persuasive. Right now, what I'm inclined to do is to do the 2 votes. And if we vote that this would be a minor modification, which is something that's not obvious to me, then we could vote it up or down. Or the request to change it could just be withdrawn.
You've already approved part of it, though, the maple tree, right?
Yes.
Well, the
but
maple
that's
tree is a
done.
separate
That's
issue.
done.
That was already done.
Could I suggest, and I don't know if it's, my suggestion was if the thing's gonna go in, the 2 benches, I think, is a little bit of overkill.
Too.
One bench makes sense. I mean, if there's a family going in there, they're not gonna sit on opposite sides of a tree back to, with their backs to each other. I think that would be a little awkward. You can't, but having a bench there, I understand there's value in that. And that if that ring of bushes, if I were to remove a handful of them to allow an access point where it's just grass going into the grass, where you could just walk in and not have to step over the bushes that are there.
You know what I think is prudent at this point is that I would say we delay this vote, because if you're talking about that strikes me as a minor modification, but I would want to see the plans.
I understand, but do you think there would be support for me proposing that, something like that?
I'd be in favor.
I would support
I
it.
think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so if I do that, let me do that, because And I know there's sensitivity a lot about native and non-native species. I don't even know if these are all non-native species out there.
I don't know either. I was looking at the list and I kind of doubt that they are, but I think it would be lovely to have native species in there. And I am
Which is-
concerned about what Angus brought up. I think if you put a bench there, what you're saying is that, anybody should be able to go there and sit on the bench and enjoy the birds in the tree above, which means that, and I doubt it would be a big deal, but it would mean that having some sort of a path going in there where somebody in a wheelchair could roll in and sit down, transfer to the bench, I think. So I think what Angus is saying is true, that you put a feature there which indicates it's a gathering spot, you have to have access.
That's right.
But
So
I
I
don't
didn't
think
write
the
the
access
rules,
would-
but
Good.
that's,
Eliminate the benches.
Yeah,
Just
just
I'll
eliminate
eliminate
the
get rid of the
benches,
bench.
leave the plants.
Leave the plants.
so
Put
what I
in
will
more pollinating plants.
what I will do is find out if there's any of those that aren't as attractive and or might survive better if they were changed. I will put something together with a little bit less, and I would also still want to leave an opening in some of the bushes so that a lawnmower could go in there.
Yes.
Sure.
Because now
Sure.
you can't even get a lawnmower in there.
Right.
And whether it's the West Newbury Garden Club or whether it's the native species group or some overlap in the Venn diagram there, I think that then you're going to have a firmer vote in favor, and you're probably going to get species that are more robust.
Yep.
Um,
I
the,
will
the,
probably
I-
pull them back a foot, a couple of feet from the pavement, because they look like they're right
Exactly.
on the pavement, so I
Yep.
have a little bit
That
of
makes
a
sense.
strip.
That
Yeah,
sounds like
and
a
in
good
fact,
idea.
if you pull the benches out of there, then you could plant right up to the tree and have only grass
Mhm.
around the outside.
Yep. Maybe that's the way to go.
And it always was my thought that my homeowners association would be maintaining this. But I've been reluctant to say one way or the other because I'm not sure of the legalities, but I believe my homeowners association and what I've told them is that, because we do have one, it's been funded. I still am in control of it. But sometime in the next couple of months, I'll be looking to turn it over to them. But no one
Well,
will be surprised if they have to do some maintenance to that on an ongoing basis.
I suspect that'll happen whether or not it's official.
They'll just do it.
Well, it's to their benefit. It's the front of their houses. People pull up. It'll be an enhancement. And you've heard what the highway guy likes, clear cut. So I would urge you to put it under the association.
Well, this is probably taken a lot longer than people anticipated, but details matter.
They do.
And so are we planning for Mike to come back to a future meeting with a finalized plan showing possible different types of plantings? No
Yeah.
benches?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's walking away tonight with the fact that this is a minor modification and that the tree part of it is approved.
Well, the tree is a minor modification, which we approved.
Okay,
As far as coming back with a different landscaping plan, I anticipate that the board would see that as a minor modification. Clearing out all the landscaping and just putting grass right up to the trunk of the tree, whether that's minor or major, I think is an actual discussion to be had.
So can
So
we
I
just
would- I-
continue this hearing? Just continue it to the next meeting and I'll have a
Yep.
new plan.
well, it's not a hearing,
Not a
so you
hearing,
could just
so it
have a
doesn't-
new, you could just appear at a new meeting.
Yeah.
Let me
Yep.
just tell you, Mr. Crow, I'm very much in favor of what you're doing and proposing. I am not at the next meeting. If you want my vote, it has to be in June. But
Yeah, well, I tell you, I feel much better about the idea of a modified landscaping plan with native plants. And if he pulls them back a little bit it's probably going to, be sort of a compromise with,
then I'm fine. If I'm hearing you sound in favor of that modified approach. That's
Right, and
great.
I think that pulling it back will give a little grace to Butch for sort of a sacrificial edge, if you will, and everybody should go home happy.
There you go.
So if voting is an issue, is it possible to vote to approve a minor modification for what has been discussed, subject to reviewing the finalized plan in the next couple of weeks that you could get a copy of?
I think it's cleaner to just come back to us as soon as you're ready. And I would anticipate that we would see a different landscaping plan, which does still landscape the island as a minor modification.
Okay,
Do you think you'll be ready by May 20th?
that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, yeah, I don't want you to miss the planting season.
No.
Think so. Yeah, sounds good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crow.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Crow. Hang in there.
Almost there.
Yes, sir.
Definitely plants, that's good.
Second item on the agenda is 29 Pleasant Street, special permit under section 9.8 for a common driveway. Do we have somebody here for Matthew George and Mary Ellen Russo?
I didn't expect anyone to be here, and I actually told the engineer, we received a request to continue this. I can read his letter if you would like, or did you all see it?
No? I didn't see it.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Hi, Katrina. We are finalizing the revised septic plan today and then plan to meet with the neighbor to hopefully agree on a house location. Unfortunately, I won't be able to provide a revised plan in time for the planning board's review. I'd like to respectfully request, hopefully for the last time, a continuance to your next scheduled meeting. Thank you, John S. Tilton, Project Manager.
All right, do we have to vote to continue this?
Yes. This is an
And,
open public
again,
hearing.
I am not
Oh,
at the
yeah,
next
okay.
meeting, so
Yeah,
we
Brian will
certainly
be.
can hold it, but
We'll still have Ted, though.
Yeah,
when
But
he-
we'll
then
have
Ted,
Rob.
but then Ted will be gone when it comes time to vote on this. So you may be in trouble if you don't wait for Brian to be here.
Is it
Right.
forum?
How many meetings
not a quorum.
how many meetings have we had in this public hearing? Just
None.
one, right?
You have not discussed it yet.
We haven't discussed it officially yet.
Right.
So
Oh.
Rob Phillips could be on board.
So this is,
Yes.
so what, how are we continuing it if we haven't had a meeting? I'm very,
You opened it and then continued it immediately.
got it. So I think a personnel change in those circumstances would be fine because I suppose you could listen to the recording of it being opened and continued, but there was nothing substantive, so. yeah.
Right.
Okay,
So would I still qualify to listen to it and vote
Yes.
whenever we do agree to vote?
Yes, you
So
would.
when would they like to continue to?
The next meeting, which is in May 20th.
All
Yeah,
right,
you-
I move that we continue this public hearing until May 20th at 7:15 PM.
Second,
All those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
Dean, I.
Deb Hamilton, I.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Unanimous. All right, then. Third item on the agenda is a pre-application meeting, Bachelor Street Recreation Area. Proposed pickleball courts, and I believe Mr. Jennings is going to talk to us about that.
Yep. So yeah, I was just looking to get kind of a initial feedback from the planning board as to what we might expect for the site plan review process. We did get funding last Monday at town meeting for construction of 2 pickleball courts. The proposed location is immediately next to the playground at Action Cove. And we've gotten site survey work and wetlands delineation. And the survey included ground features and topo, not for the entire property, but for the anything in the vicinity. So we would be intending to apply for both Concom and Planning Board. And as part of the pre-application process, wanted to get on your agenda for shortly after town meeting, just to get advice, because that's going to inform how we go forward. So, for instance, we know what the dimensions of 2 pickleball courts are. It's 64 by 65 feet. which you can see on the screen is, you know, based on just the aerials, it fits in that area. Now that we have a survey, we would, we could mark that on the plan. Really, the question is what level of detail the planning board's going to be looking for. We do have funds available if we need to engage an engineer to prepare, you know, site plan documents for us, but I'm not sure if that level of detail is going to be required. The specifications to build 2 pickleball courts are, you know, set out in detail in a book we have, and so it's really, I guess that's the question is what level of you know, what level of site plan we would anything that we are not including with the application, we would seek a waiver for. I did meet with Katrina and we walked through the site plan review bylaw and regs, and I know she has some initial thoughts on things that might we might seek a waiver for on kind of like number of copies, that kind of thing. But basically, I'm looking to get a handle on you know, what we're going to need to provide. Our goal would be to submit, I would say, sometime by the end of June, just to keep things moving forward.
So I'll just speak as one member of the planning board. I'm not too worried about the normal requirements for site plan review because we've already got a public facility with parking. My concern would be, you know, access, drainage, impact on the abutters. I know pickleball courts, some people find the the noises associated with playing pickleball to be a little annoying. I don't know if there's going to be like planned hours or anything like that. And I know there aren't a lot of abutters right here, but so, you know, and I don't see a sidewalk specifically to get there. So that's the kind of things that I'm thinking of. And Deb, Brian, what are you thinking about?
Yeah.
I think, oh,
Who's up?
Go
you
ahead.
go
Deb.
ahead. All right, I just remember when I served as a conservation commissioner, the only vernal pond that we certified in town was southwest of this spot. So I will be interested to see the wetlands delineations just to make sure that there's sufficient space around this. That Angus, am I right that it has not yet been delineated? It's part of
No,
the
it
plan.
has. Those materials were included in your packet, I believe. Yeah, we have had it delineated. And the conservation agent's been very closely involved. It would not have gotten this far if he didn't think that it could be permittable by Concom. In fact, he thought it would be very straightforward because it's an existing disturbed area.
Okay.
Yeah, we got the delineation.
And I believe the pickleball court is going right here.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
What? Brian?
Yes.
Ann?
Yeah. Angus?
Mhm.
I have significant concern on the traffic matters here and parking in particular. You know, I've had the good fortune with 3 grandkids now to spend some time back down there. There's been a hiatus from when my other kids, they're now grown. You know, pickleball court, you could have 8 cars using the 2 courts. And I've seen Action Cove packed on weekends with kids and also people using the basketball courts. I am going to be very interested to see what you how you planning to handle parking for this. And if in fact, what I would suggest that you think about banning pickleball parking at Action Cove and let people walk there from the paved parking area.
Is there, you know, is there any plans, Angus, for formalizing the informal walkway that goes between
Yes.
ball
Yeah,
fields?
that's within the CPA application. It specifies that there would be a stone dust walkway connecting the existing parking area Uh,
Which parking area?
Which
the
parking
one
area?
right next to the playgrounds.
Angus, that's
No,
not
we're
going to
talking
be
about the other
that's
Well,
not
no,
gonna
I
be
know, Brian,
viable.
I'm telling you what's in there. I'm not trying to respond to what you just said. So you made it clear that's not going to be amenable to you, but that is what is outlined in the application. So
Well,
it
you'll
sounds
have
like we're going
the
to have.
mothers and fathers
Yep.
banging on the town office doors.
It's true. I've seen the Action Cove parking fill that lot and be lining the driveways and
Absolutely.
on the shoulders of the road, especially if there are ball games going on at the same time on a nice day. It's pretty intense.
Is there,
Well,
is there,
people could park up in back of the town office building though. I mean,
Oh,
that's,
absolutely. But
Yeah,
they
there
should
needs to be a
not,
path.
so they're
they
just, they're,
should not be at Action Cove.
they need to, there needs to be a walkway then to get from that upper parking lot down to the pickleball courts.
that's what I was asking about. Everybody walks between the two ball fields and you can sort of see the tapering area that, represents that thin space between the fences there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that goes to the, the hot dog shed, and then you've got the paved area behind that. The other thing too is, are there any plans, Angus, for like paving the Action Cove parking lot? Because if you pave it and stripe it, you can usually get a somewhat higher density of parking.
No, there are no plans to do that.
Okay. Well, Katrina, you mentioned, and Rob, do you want to weigh in at this point?
No, thank you.
Okay, Katrina, Angus mentioned that you might have kind of prepared some sort of list of waivers or whatnot on a site plan review documents.
I didn't actually prepare a list. We went through the site plan requirements and just kind of reviewing them to see which ones we would consider asking, because the planning board does ask for us to formally request each particular waiver. And the first ones I think we would ask is a reduced number of paper copies, because truthfully, not many departments pick up their paper
Okay.
copies.
So there's
Planning
paper
board doesn't really
copies.
get them either.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about, will there be a signage plan? So these are things we have to think about too. Will there be particular landscaping with it? And then for a traffic plan, I asked are there any bike racks there? Because, and I'm not sure, does anyone know if there are bike racks in this park?
I don't remember.
That could be included as part of this project then, if there aren't any.
That's something Park and Rec could probably do at some point. If that's
So there is a wetlands delineation already.
Yeah, when it comes to wetlands, if the Concom's happy, I'm happy.
Mhm.
A lot of these things have to do with architecture and building size, things like that. Oh, the walkway to the court. So we have to finalize plans for some kind of walkway to the court. But specifically on the plans, we've had an engineer already do the topo plans. Could the plans be done in-house by someone who isn't an engineer? Would you find that acceptable if we used aerial photos or I guess we can't really use the engineering plans and write on them.
Well, for site plan review, I'm okay with that, but I mean, there does have to be an engineer involved because we're talking about a change to the runoff here.
Right, grading and
Right.
drainage are the two
Right,
things.
and
Right.
they are going before the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, no, if the Concom's happy, I'm happy, but if there's gonna be engineering plans anyway, right, that are looking. at this stuff.
Katrina, could you go back to that plan that showed the vernal pool?
Yes. Oh, this one shows it also with a aerial photo superposed. on it.
That's better, yeah. But I still don't know where the courts are shown on this.
It would be right
That-
here.
yeah.
Can you see my?
Yes.
Maybe zoom in a
Are there-
bit further, Katrina, just to hone in right on that, just on that spot where your cursor is.
Would you characterize it as pretty level? Oh, there are topo lines. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Right here.
the grading and drainage are not only part of the Concom's purview, it goes in all the other directions too, I guess is kind of what I'm thinking. So I don't know, are they gonna be cutting and filling? How are they gonna?
So I can tell you kind of conversationally, and then,
Yeah.
you know, obviously, once there's something before you formally, it'd be documented. But the way these are constructed is there's a crushed stone base is excavated out and then backfilled with crushed stone, and then there's crushed stone around the perimeter of the court. So basically, there's sheet flow off the courts into basically the trench area around the perimeter, which then goes down into the crushed stone underneath. But there's you know, detailed drawings showing all of that.
Right, I mean, it
And
looks
are-
like there's
are-
potentially 2 or 3 feet of elevation change across the area. I'm having trouble seeing it, but that's what it looks like to me. There's
Me too.
128,
Yeah,
126.
128, yeah, yeah. Couple
So
feet.
is that gonna be built up, like
And
a
it would be
fence
graded
or
down.
graded down? Okay.
Right, so there'll be a small retaining wall, I think, on one side.
Yeah, right now, if you zoom in further to the chain link fence, Katrina, right now at the back of the ball field, there's the
it.
fence is at the top of a short slope,
Mhm.
and then it slopes down toward toward Action Cove Playground. So the idea was actually to cut into the hillside to kind of grade down, and then to have a retaining wall along there that would basically end up being one of the 4 kind of
Sides,
walls
yeah.
of the pickleball area.
It sounds to me like that needs some engineering to it. I mean, you're gonna be retaining the ball field effectively, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah,
So
and that
I don't
can,
think,
that can affect that can affect your chain link fence and, water
Well, the-
issues. And then I've never played pickleball. I don't know how vigorous it gets, but I mean, is there any chance somebody's gonna spill off and slam into the retaining wall there?
No,
or-
when I said it's one of the 4, I meant kind of, I mean, visually, but no, there would be chain link fence on all 4 sides of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm seeing 4 significant trees there. Are those?
Right.
Those
Yeah.
would not be touched. That's part of why we're so hemmed in with needing to deal with the slope coming off that chain link fence is in order
Exactly.
to avoid disturbing any of the trees.
right, you
Well,
may end up
Angus,
needing a retaining wall on 2 sides if you're gonna protect those trees at the elevation at which they're growing.
I'm guessing, Angus, that you're getting a feel for the kinds of our areas of concern.
Yes, I am.
Is there anything specific that we can do to facilitate, make your life easier here with respect to site plan review? Any specific requests you have for us tonight?
Yeah, just one. If you could zoom back out, Katrina, to this same image. I think everything you said, I think is is a matter of documentation and we will get an engineer on board. I think that's going to be, it's clear that's going to be important. In terms of the location of parking, though, that is something that if there's an expectation of basically prohibiting pickleball parking on the lot next to the basketball court, something like that's beyond. So this land, I should have prefaced honestly by saying this land is under the care and custody of the Park and Rec Commission. So while they have voted to endorse the concept back, I think it was in early this year, and then they voted to recommend the CPA funding proposal, they would also need to vote to authorize the submittal of the application because the land is under their care and custody. So anything beyond what we've talked with them about, I'm very comfortable they're supportive of everything in that CPA application. But to the extent it's getting into, something further than that, whether a longer walkway than was what was envisioned or some kind of change to who can park where, that's something that's going to need to be reviewed with them. And I'm
Yeah.
certainly not prepared to say that we can agree to that.
Is there
Well,
possibility of walking around on the wetland
No.
side?
No,
Oh,
it's right up against the wetlands and it's heavily vegetated.
but
And what about
the-
between the 2 ball fields, directly across?
Yeah, oh yeah, people can walk across the field, but in terms of if there was, I think there was a
Sports
suggestion of like an actual path, that's a pretty significant cost item, which is not part of what was budgeted.
No, I don't think it
Well, I
passed.
mean, that might be in Park and Rec's interest anyway. I mean, that's an informal path right now that is heavily used.
Right.
Doesn't strike me as being, extremely expensive, but I could be
Which
wrong
which
about that.
location exactly are you talking about, Ray?
Between the two ball fields, there's that thin area between the two fences, between the big kids
The
ball field.
band-
That one there. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. To kind of encourage people, I mean, I appreciate what Brian's saying. For me, it's like it's a public first come, first serve kind of thing. But I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've walked through that skinny area.
Yeah.
It strikes me that formalizing that as a path that goes all the way back to the parking area is good for everybody, Action Cove as well.
This
Yeah,
does
but
present.
when you pull in there with a 2 and a 3-year-old in your car, and then find that there's 8 cars playing pickleball, you are not going to be very happy about this.
I
Well,
understand.
I think this is going to be an issue for Park and Rec, actually,
Mhm.
because they've got a lot of different facilities with different overflow crowd times, and it's sort of like up to them in a way to provide enough parking for everything. So I don't
think
want to.
our site plan review concern is, well, I think it's legitimate for Brian to be,
Yeah,
It's-
I think
he's
so
got
too.
firsthand experience there, but I mean, it's safety, right? Our site plan review is
No, it
safety,
is. It is. Yeah.
access.
It's
Yeah.
safety, it's traffic flow, and it is parking.
Mhm.
We went through all this at, the high school and whatnot, so.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of yeah, it's a kind of a.
Now, having said
example.
that, if Park and Rec says, well, we'll make the best of it and see what happens, well, I can tell you I know what's going to happen, but planning for this is something that should be done beforehand. I
Right,
think
we
the
don't
pickleball court is a great idea. I think it's wonderful, but let's make it the best use for everybody.
maybe
Yeah,
it's
and
a-
I'm wondering if there's a way, to improve the parking area there. Like I said, maybe at fall town meeting or something. It's related to the pickleball court, but I think everybody would benefit from it.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Ray. It's somewhat slapdash
Mhm.
when you pull in there these days. Yes.
And it may
Yeah,
just need
and-
some
and-
dimensional adjustments to get additional spaces or rows without taking. too much.
Exactly. It's not my area of civil engineering, but it came up in lots of civil
Right.
engineering projects that I've reviewed. And if that's properly paved and if it's striped, people respect that, and you're able to get more cars in a smaller area.
Good point.
And it's also better for strollers and for, not dragging in all kinds of sand and whatnot into the car with the kids and.
Hey, for plowing, for heaven's sake, since we're
Oh,
Yeah.
good Lord. There we go.
we're now concerned.
Better for plowing.
Good. Well, this is exactly the kind of feedback I was looking for.
Good.
So
Thank you.
thank you for that.
And Angus, I think I'm speaking for the rest of the planning board here, but I know, as far as I'm concerned, I appreciate your coming to us. I think site plan review is a good thing, and I never want it to be an adversarial thing.
Oh, yeah. No.
So-
This is honestly, this is exactly the kind of input I was looking
Good,
for. Because
good.
we don't want to, we don't want to expend funds to kind of over design something. I wanted to come right after the vote.
Yeah.
Because that gives us time to get things
I
scoped out.
forget what it
properly.
was, and it was years ago now, but I remember being frustrated because it seemed like people viewed site plan review as an adversarial thing that was going to slow everything down, and I don't want this to be that way.
Well, that's a different conversation. This is something that very legitimately does. I mean, those were other conversations on other applications.
Don't even remind me what specifically it was. All I'm saying here is I don't want this to be an impediment. I want it to be helpful.
No, we're right from the jump. We've known that site plan and Concom would be required, and I'll tell you, when we started the feasibility of looking at, we tried to cast as wide a net as we could. And a lot of people brainstormed and we looked at a lot of different potential sites. And we arrived at this as being kind of I will say the least bad site. I mean, in some ways it has some obvious advantages, there's a lot of complementary uses, but there are some challenges with this site. But I can say of all of these sites that we looked at, this was by far the best. Every other town-owned site we looked at, there were significant constraints, if not absolute deal breakers. So kind of, fitting this into this tight spot, I think, if it all works out, I think is going to be a great amenity, and it's going to make something that's terrific today even better. But it's not without its challenges, and certainly parking is kind of probably the most obvious of those.
Yeah, and I think as far as my concern about sounds being annoying to abutters, I think you got the best attenuation that you could have at this site.
Yeah, and
Now
that
you-
was definitely a consideration because, yeah, there were other sites that were kind of earlier in the feasibility study that we were looking at that for that reason, among others, they just kind of fell off the table because they had direct, residential butters, and that was definitely a concern. And Brian, Richard, and I have definitely talked about the importance of doing kind of the state-of-the-art sound attenuation, whether that ends up being just a filter fabric that you sometimes see around courts, and or arborvitaes. We really haven't gotten that far yet because we want
Yeah,
to
but I mean, you've already got a whole woodlands there on one side, and then
Yeah.
you've got.
Oh, yeah.
distance.
It's really there's really no one that's gonna be,
Yeah,
but I think even with that said, there's people who are just using the playground who might not want that clip clop,
Wow.
So whatever we can do to dull that is one of the design objectives we have.
Hey, Angus, can I keep you here for just a few more minutes?
Oh, I'm planning to stay through.
Good.
Yeah.
So, as far as pickleball courts, are we good for now?
Yeah. Thank you
All
very
set?
much for your time.
Yeah, so I would like to take the agenda items a little out of order here and talk about next steps for the MBTA communities law. We need to, it's my opinion that we need to get something done this fall. It would be a tragedy not to pass something. And I had a couple of quick questions, and Angus, you might know the answers. And if not, then I think we need to ask us for some legal advice. One is our bylaw proposal, which included the Knapp's property, was voted down at town meeting. And when we take votes here in the planning boards, things can be withdrawn with prejudice or without prejudice. And then if something is voted down, I guess my question is it possible to bring back that same motion at fall town meeting? Or is there some sort of 2-year time period before you can bring that back?
As long as the planning board if the planning board were to favorably recommend that would be allowed. If there's a zoning amendment voted down, it cannot be brought back within 2 years unless the planning board favorably recommends it.
Okay, so the bottom line is we can legally bring it back to the town this fall if we want to. Correct?
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Good.
confirm that. Another thing is, I don't know, Katrina, probably you would know better, other planning board members would know. Is it possible to overlay this with our commercial district and hope to get a combination, multi-use, multifamily zoning? Is that a possibility? Because I know
If
that.
we want to include mixed use, we are going to have to do an economic feasibility study. I believe that's going to be required. And so that would be something to do before we consider that.
So it would be possible, but it would require extra expenditures.
Right, and I don't know how long that would take either. And I'm not sure what the order is. I would have to look into it further.
Ray, is that what you meant, mixed use, or just that it be in the commercial district?
I was thinking that, because I know we talked about mixed use at the other sites as well, and we decided not to include it for these very reasons.
Right.
But as we and please, everybody, feel free to weigh in and tell me to be quiet about stuff. But, I've been thinking hard about this since the vote. And I'm just thinking that in my mind, we have to look at all the different possibilities, not exactly starting over because we got a lot of information that's already been done and we've had the consultants and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, what are the possibilities? And, one would be to overlay this on our downtown area such that, things in the commercial zone could end up being both residential and commercial, mixed use, exactly. I don't know if we end up having enough acreage there by the time you deal having the parking lots and whatnot. And I don't know if it would make West Newbury better or worse. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Does that need to be contiguous, space if, the minimum is like 6, 7 acres?
I think we discovered that it did. Couldn't have a little
50%
here.
has to be contiguous, I seem to recall. And so if we
Well-
need 5.8 acres, 2.5 acres.
No, but there's, no, it has to be contiguous. We got that verified in writing by the state last summer because we had been looking at more of a scattered site approach of whether you could have a number of smaller districts, each with a proper allowed
Yeah,
density.
you're right, we
which
did.
So there
yeah.
must be a minimum
aggregate
size.
Yeah, we
would
did
amount
that.
to
Yeah.
87, and the state shut that down in writing. And Katrina, that was before your time, but yeah, they said they would not accept a district that was less than 5 acres. So you could have multiple 5-acre sites, but at 15 units an acre, you're then up to 150 units. So it does not work. I wish it did, frankly, as a planner, but it doesn't. The state shut that down in writing.
Yeah, I know there's other towns that had several districts, but you just explained it because those other towns had more.
Yeah, we
acreage
don't
than
have
they needed
anywhere
to
near
do
that
anyway.
Yeah,
space.
one was Amesbury, who needed hundreds and hundreds of units, so for them it worked, but for us, no.
Yeah, so I'm just,
Hey,
I want
in
to hear
response-
people's, I just want to hear everybody's, including yours, Katrina, and Rob and Ted and Angus. I want to just, the idea of overlaying the commercial district, is that a no?
So my initial thought about that is if you don't require it to be a mixed use, then wouldn't you fear a loss of any commercial? And
Yes,
so I don't think this town wants to lose any of its commercial.
No.
And
It
it
would
could
have
be
to be-
converted to housing
It would have to be mixed use or no go if we were to
or
do it.
And-
required mixed use.
And if the abutters to Knapp took issue, imagine the hue and cry, not only from the abutters in downtown, but as you point out, everybody who goes to the post office and the food mart and the barber shop and the bank. I mean, that is our little downtown. We don't want to look like Amesbury. We don't want to look like tear down the buildings that are there. I don't think I can't imagine that there would be any support. I have seen a couple of posts from people, in the anti-NAP camp who have suggested that, but to me, that seemed like a totally unsuitable approach.
And Brian?
Yeah, I have oh,
Yeah,
Should I
Brian.
go?
Yeah,
yeah, a couple thoughts. I think we're all, no matter what side you were on, we're going to be very interested to see what Mr. Sarkis does. And by does, I mean, is he in fact going to purchase the property? Does he have an escape clause or what? That would certainly flavor. If he, let's say he in fact purchases it, I think
that's likely.
I think we have an obligation to explore with him and with the immediate abutters what he's doing, and then try to explain how, the MBTA proposal gives better protections
It
and a better
does.
outcome. But
It absolutely does.
that's only one of my thoughts. Okay, I mean,
All right.
and that hinges on what Mr. Sarkis decides to do.
Well, it does eliminate that uncertainty which people had.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I get it. I mean, I you take the guy at his word, but he may have an escape hatch. The second is,
I don't think he wants the escape hatch. He wants to do this project.
well, still.
All right.
people
don't
But
know.
get out.
Brian's saying we'll know more
Yeah, we'll know
in
more.
a few weeks. Yeah.
You know, we have the other parcel that was explored and has some issues with sight lines, but the Dunn parcel has our consultant had plopped things might look like. That's there for sure. And then the idea that some had of putting it on top of Drake's Landing, or I even heard somebody talk about Major Boy Drive. I checked with Ian Burns of MBPC, and he said it could be put on top of Drake's Landing in his opinion, in his knowledge. That was just without looking at the dimensionally, but he thinks it could be done legally. And there's a couple of other relatively open parcels, but who knows if someone else on Main Street is amenable to this type of a project. And I do want to point out that it really needs to be on Main Street.
Yes.
The EOHLC has stated that it can't be off in the woods someplace or with non-reasonable access, particularly on what's now a bus route.
Would you remind us what those letters mean? What agency is that? The ELHOC? What's it?
Executive
Executive
Office of
Office of
Housing and Livable
Housing.
Communities.
Yeah. You can just call it HLC. That's much easier to say.
Whatever.
Brian, can I just jump back a little
Yeah.
bit? So what I was doing leading up to the town meeting and then since then is, if you read the law itself, it's not a lot of text. And it doesn't mention being close to public transportation directly. But I know now that, being along Main Street, we do have a bus line, and that's desirable. And then when I was looking at what other towns had put out in their facts, I keep coming up with phrases like feasible development or reasonable. I forget the language, but basically over and over again, I come up with it's got to be possible that this would be built. It's not required that anything be built, but you can't put it over a lot where it really could never happen. So for example, you couldn't put it on the industrial zone because you run into all kinds of problems with access down there.
Right.
And the reason why this comes to mind is because Drake's Landing, the only way you could do it there would be to buy up everything and then tear down stuff and then rebuild stuff. And that's not feasible. So I'm not sure you could put it over Drake's Landing.
No,
I respect.
It's not developable. It's
It
been
is
developed.
developable. It is. Ian
been
Burns
developed.
said it is developable.
So
Right.
this is one of those questions that I thought, Angus,
Yeah.
we might want to get confirmation. We wouldn't want to.
We can do that, Ray. With Katrina can do a simple note to EOHLC, and they've been very cooperative and helpful for us.
Okay,
and
but
just get a
the
quick
thing about
answer.
Drake's Landing, of course, is that it's just one great big parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's a question I had.
Yeah. But just one finishing point. You had advocated last fall, as we talked about, moving forward on which parcel and all, giving people options at town meeting. And we all talked it through, and we came up with one, parcel. But I'm going to suggest that I think in this case for the fall, that may be something we wish to consider. That we have one or two or perhaps three choices. People have been educated now, and I think have a much better understanding of what MBTA is, what it means and does. I think that's something that we need to consider over the next couple of months.
And that was another question I had for Angus and Katrina. So, you know, you set the agenda for town meeting. And then you have the warrant, and an article informs the town about a subject to be discussed. And it's my understanding that you could have several motions under one article. And so in my mind, let's say that when all is said and done, I'm still curious about everybody's feeling about overlaying the commercial district, but let's leave that aside. When everything's done, let's say that we've got 3 very reasonable parcels that we're absolutely sure the state would accept. For example, Knapp's done, and maybe we come across another one, right? Drake's, Knapp's done and Drake's, let's say. Angus, and Katrina, as far as you know, could we have, the way to do this, I'm guessing, would be to have 3 motions. And, and let's say the first was Knapp's, and somebody comes in and they're not in a butter to Knapp's or anything else. They would, but they like done. They could vote down on the Knapp's, and if that motion failed, then everybody at fall town meeting would know that if that fails, the next one up is Dunn's. And then maybe that one passes, and then it's been decided.
I think procedurally, you'd be dealing with multiple articles. So for instance, the bylaw could be identical in all respects, but the zoning map change could be different. I'm thinking on my feet here, so obviously we need to run this through council. As you know very well, this would be a very unconventional way to propose zoning, but I think, desperate times, desperate measures, all of that. I think as you're talking it through, rather than a single article with multiple alternate motions, that's something I could see procedurally being a concern, because as Casey says at the beginning of every meeting, have you been properly warned? The posting is so important. Whereas if there were multiple, let's say, 2 or 3 different articles, each with a different district, but substantially identical zoning, that feels, it looks awkward, but it feels more procedurally solid.
Okay, so that's something we want to, yes, I'll come to you, Deb, and I see you, Ann. So what I'd like the other planning board members to weigh in, and I see that we've got Wendy here as well from the select board, is what do you think of the idea of giving, at fall town meeting, of giving the town a couple options for a vote? Rob, I saw Deb, and then I'll go Deb and Rob. So Deb?
Well, I'd like to remind everybody that getting the town meeting to approve is not the final say-so here. The advantage that we have with NAP is that hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars were spent to present us with something that we know that the state has already approved. Any other option that we have may not get approved before the December. And it seems to me that not being truly buildable is a huge loophole in the law that I suspect will be visited again. I mean, it is nonsensical to think that Drake's Landing is further developable. You are not going to be adding any housing into a site that's already been completely developed.
That's where I go back to Angus for some sort of legal confirmation. And I think Drake's Landing is a perfect question to specifically ask, because in my mind, that might meet the letter of the law, but it's not feasible. And when I looked at the law itself, I couldn't find that sort of direction, but other towns had put forward that it has to be feasible.
Yes,
So
it is.
Okay. So, okay, Deb, Ann.
Yeah, that's
We'll go more around, but Ann.
there are 2 things. That's sort of where I think we have it is very difficult for every community in the state that's subject to this law to work with it, because the law itself is a few sentences and one has to rely completely on so-called guidelines. And the guidelines developed over time, and consultants would talk to HLC and get an opinion, and Ian Burns gets an opinion. It's not quite a moving target, but it's not as clear as one would hope in trying to work with a statute. It's pretty slippery. So I think everybody needs to understand that. The options thing, I see that as it seems like a good idea. It feels a little bit like junior high, student council elections, but um, if you have three options, the underlying bylaw, each with a different zone, they could all fail. Okay.
Mhm.
So I don't see how you procedurally craft
Well, let me
language
tell
that
you
would come up
something.
with an answer.
I learned
Well,
something on Monday night, walking out. I happened to be speaking with um, a lawyer. And there's something you can do that we actually could have done it at Springtown meeting, although it would have been underhanded and I would never have wanted it to happen. But you can do a motion to reconsider. And so if we went through with a round, and let's say there were three options and they all three failed, then I think procedurally, legally, you could then have a motion to reconsider. And you could go back through the options again. And the idea being you keep going back through until one of them passes. So I don't know legally if that works. I think logistically it could work.
I might just say, listen, the majority rules in town. It could be, as many people now have an understanding of what's at risk funding wise. If a majority says they don't care and they're going to throw their hands up with funding, well, that's the way it is. And maybe the
Well,
state
you-
will
you-
allow, maybe the state would allow us to revisit it a year hence or something. But
I think if you went through options A, B, and C and they all got voted down, you'd have an idea of which one was closest to passing. You could
Yeah.
do a motion to reconsider one
Yes.
more time.
I agree.
And then if everybody voted it down, then I think I'm with you, Brian.
Yeah.
We gave our best. Rob, what do you got, Rob?
Okay, if I drop off, I apologize. I might have a low bandwidth, but I think some of this discussion is a little bit far ahead of actually knowing what we're going to proceed on. And all I would offer is this, and I agree with Ann Bardine that a lot of this stuff, one town will say this, another town says that. There's different information that comes out initially. I think what I would ask is for us to consider one of our members and the town planner sitting with one of the select board members and the town manager, who has also got a great planning background, just to compare notes. I think everybody's aware of everything that's been said and everything that would be worth pursuing. These are all good ideas of how we would manage town meeting. These are good ideas about what parcels might be appropriate to consider, how many parcels, etc. But I think that it might be a select board member and a planning board member, just the various things we've heard, so that they could come back to each of their
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm kind of
boards,
good.
and we could maybe have a little more focus.
We can't hear you, Rob.
Yeah, you're freezing
Well, I'm gonna
up.
have to drop off then.
But no, don't drop off. And I think I got the gist of it, sort of a subcommittee on the side to review these things. But my only hesitation here, I need to be able to say to anybody who asks me what I know and what I don't know. And like one of the things that we cleared up tonight,
That's what,
very
Ray,
helpful.
I'm sorry. That's what I'm asking those people to put together. It should only take a couple weeks. This is the most important issue that's been before the town for the past 2 decades. And I think we've got to get a little more focused on it, and I would prefer it be done by a smaller group that can go back to their respective boards and then take us through some of the things that we've been saying, well, it's this way, no, it's that way, this town does this town does that. That's all I'm saying. I'd like to see it a little more focused for our benefit, for our discussions. Shouldn't take a long time to do.
I gotcha. I guess my question is, what's not focused here? Can we go back to NAPS? That got answered. Yes, we could. If the planning board, if this fall rolls around, and the planning board still thinks NAPS is viable. And as Brian pointed out earlier, we'll know whether or not the purchase and sale agreement actually went through with Sarkis. And because a lot of people thought that it might fail, and then maybe there'd be a white knight come in and preserve the land. Well, in a month or so, we'll know that. In the meantime, I think we have to, and as far as Deb was concerned about all the consultants, and yes, that was money well spent. And the Dunn property came up as a viable option. So I would picture at the fall town meeting, at least coming back to the town with an option of Dunn and Knapp. And I think we need to, and then, I'm still skeptical about Drake's, but if we got a legal opinion that we could trust that Drake's is a possibility, then I think we owe the town to come back with that, because that's been a lot of the discussion as well.
So let's have EOHLC get in a letter. Katrina can draft that out and have it.
Katrina, could you do that?
So we want to check to see if we can put it over Drake's Landing.
Yeah.
If it would
Which is
be
a
acceptable to
condominium.
the state, but be sure to point out that, that's the big question here is the feasibility thing, because it's one big parcel.
Yeah, but other towns.
I know they will accept it, because
They
in
will.
Middleton, we proposed Ferncroft Towers and all the condominium associations
Yeah.
there, and that was approved by the state.
Yeah, they've done this in Beverly and
Yeah.
Salem.
I'm just being super cautious, because I came across that feasible word and the reasonable word.
So
Drake's doesn't strike me as either reasonable or feasible.
Are you taking any public input?
We can, and I hear you, Doug, and we'll do that in just a minute. I just want to make sure Katrina has,
Yeah,
nobody
I can
objects
ask
to
them.
Katrina checking, right?
No, of course not. We need info.
You want me to ask the state whether or not we can place our existing proposed bylaw on the Drake's Landing parcel?
Correct. If that would be acceptable to the state, despite, the difficulty of actually implementing it on that plot of land.
I would just, I don't know if this is gonna happen, but I mean, we had this conversation with the state in the abstract, asking whether it could be put over a developed area, and they said yes, and they said there's nothing in the regulations to prohibit that. But that's different from saying it could work in Drake's or any other given location. I do wonder if they would be willing to give that kind of advice on the basis of a letter. We've all heard discussion of this compliance model, which has to be put together for a
Right.
specific site. I do expect the state will expect a significant amount of due diligence. I don't think it's going to be as simple as just sending, hey, here's a map. Is this going to work? But anyhow, we can get into that. I just wanted to raise that tonight in case that does end up being a tripwire, which I do think it will. I think, I think it then becomes like, is this what we want to run up the flagpole? And is tonight the night to make that decision? Obviously, I'd love to hear from Wendy. I'm sure others would too, but obviously the select board's going to be discussing this at their next meeting. I don't know that that's the one the town wants to run up the flagpole.
Well, it seems to me, though, that an initial inquiry that's still relatively informal, it's coming from the town planner, however, would precede a compliance model. You wouldn't want to go ahead with the compliance model if they told you right away that it was not feasible, right? I mean, I think.
Apply.
I'm not sure how fast I will get anything back either. It could take months, but I could ask us the simple question, can we overlay it on a condominium association? Would that answer your question, Ray?
My concern with Drake's Landing, again, it's one parcel that's been built up. It's not like there are other places that are built up where it's reasonable to think, yeah, I'm gonna take this block and I'm gonna clear out the existing buildings. I'm gonna build new housing according to the MBTA zoning that we just passed. For Drake's, I don't think that that's a realistic possibility because it's all brand new housing.
Right.
And to remove a whole bunch of housing to build up a whole bunch of housing
You don't get
is silly. But
ridiculous.
I think the town is going to demand of us whether or not that would satisfy the state. The town has indicated.
Let's see what other, perhaps this gentleman who would like to speak has another property in mind. Maybe
Yeah,
there's something we've missed.
we will, but I don't want to drift away from Drake before it's clear what I'm
Well,
sure, what I'm sure we've heard from the town in multiple different ways. You know, that, you know, everybody brings this up and they've been bringing it up over and over again. And it was the people that voted no, a big contingent of them wanted to do something along these lines.
Yeah, and we need to,
So I
respond to that.
personally, I need to know whether I can say yes or no. And when I dug into
not
it,
gonna know.
I couldn't get a clear answer from what I found out there. So that's why I want a definitive legal statement.
Yeah, I would suggest it would be worth people kind of getting up to speed on what this compliance model is and what it entails and what type of documentation the state requires. Because I do have a concern that running something up the flagpole, meaning like correspondence from a town employee to the state, you know, I think does, you know, raise certain red flags.
Well, so
mean, I don't-
what would be the right way to go, Angus, on this
I
specific
just think this,
question?
first of all, I think there's an open question as to which entity is kind of driving this next round, whether it's the select board or the planning board, or both. I mean, potentially both elected bodies could work in parallel, but I think, you know, if there's something that's overtly intended to undercut the spirit of the law, and that's stated to the state in writing, you know, I have to assume that's going to invite a lot of scrutiny on whatever might be proposed in the future. So I think if that is going to be done, I think we ought to do the homework on the front end, put it through the compliance model, which requires documentation of what you estimate the build out potential is and so forth. If we're not doing any of that, we're just sending a quick note. I think there's a bigger downside than upside.
But Angus, what about these other towns where they've, like Ferncroft in Middleton and other places, did they do that? I thought they did.
So some of the, so I had asked Katrina to research some other communities with districts that had been put onto developed areas, and she did send me a number of examples. I don't know whether she shared those with the planning board or not, but that was about 2 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago, and a number of those examples were overlaying existing areas that are already zoned for high density development. So that's a different situation than what we have. So I think that the devil's in the details here. Generally, there is no prohibition in the regulations to adopting a district over a developed area.
Yeah.
But it's the specifics, and the sites do need to be approved by the state.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's actually very helpful. If they were already at that density or greater, then obviously it would be fine. So that's a fork in the road that I hadn't realized. So thank you for clarifying.
And I had not until Katrina did that research, because I'd been hearing this too, and I wanted specifics, and that's so.
And
That's
again, I keep coming back to the words feasible and, you know, reasonably possible, that kind of phrase. Is that part of the law or is it not? Is it specifically mentioned in some state guideline someplace, or is it not? Because I think that's relevant. Rob, I see you there. Wendy and Doug, George I haven't forgotten about you. I swear to God, I haven't forgotten about you. Wendy, you want to weigh in on any of this right now, representing the select board?
Yeah, I think the word in the regs is developable. It's not reasonable or feasible. I mean, in terms of whether a parcel will comply. I do want to echo what Angus said. I think a conversation between the planning board and the select board about who's going to take the lead or how we're going to make this next round is very timely. As Rob said, this is a really important issue for our town, and we need to make sure we're organized and can carry this through. So I would propose considering that as a next step.
Well, that's fine. I have no objection to that kind of a thing. I'm just very conscious of fall coming up. And I had these very specific questions about being able to come back to the town with maps. We got that answered. Having multiple options from the town. Is that possible procedurally? It appears it is. And then the two places I also had questions about was overlaying our commercial district with some sort of multi-use thing. Katrina points out that there has to be an economic feasibility study if we do that. I don't know if that's of interest to anybody else in here but me, but to me, I'm interested in knowing whether or not that's possible. And then the Drake's Landing question, because it may meet the letter of the law, but in practical aspect of it, I don't see that would ever happen. Is it all right if I ask Mr. Is
Yes.
your last name George?
First name's Doug, last name's George.
So Mr. George, just if you don't mind saying your address, we usually require that.
It's 419 Main Street.
Okay, and Mr. George, what do you have for us?
So I sat in on the very initial two or three meetings when you brought the consultants in and they started studying this and read the law and all that. And frankly, I think they did a great job. And I think a couple things happened with the property you identified. There was so much misinformation out there and false propaganda that this property, when it's developed, would bypass site plan review, would bypass all of the wetlands regulations, would bypass conservation. There was so much misinformation out there that there was hysteria developed that everybody wanted to vote no. And there needs to be a better propaganda model to avoid that, no matter what you do next. And show the path to development under each scenario in advance, because they can't bypass all the safeguards that are in place, the drainage studies, the traffic studies. I don't believe this overlay gives them that right. Secondly, I believe you could do NAPs, and I believe has to be developable, and whether it's feasible or not is a financial model, and that has nothing to do with it. And if you can put together a multiple choice and get it done legally, yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of doing it, but I don't know if that's a possibility. But whatever you pick and whatever you pursue, and I'd like to see them go back to the original property, there needs to be a better public statement about the path to develop under the scenarios, with or without this overlay.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I tried that with my table, but my table was, have been informed multiple times, was too complicated for people.
The choice without it, though, was that people were misstating on social media and driving too many no votes there, and the squeaky wheel won here.
I hear you. Thank you for your input, Mr. George.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Now, we get into a logistics thing here. And as far as who's driving the bus, my feeling is the bus needs to be driven. It strikes me as natural, and what other towns have done is that the planning board is the one that's taking the votes and putting together the proposed zoning. But I'm more interested in being successful this fall than who's driving the bus. I kind of like a parliamentary idea. I'm hearing what Rob has said and Angus, and I'm sure Katrina and Wendy, you know, what do you want us to do tonight in order to move this forward in the most
Right,
expedient?
can I speak as well?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that you wanted to. I see your name is Devin. We'll get you.
No, it's
I'll come
Evan,
back to you.
sorry.
I'll come back to you. So, my question is for Katrina, Wendy, Angus. I probably won't be chair much longer. How do you best want to proceed? I mean, you mentioned some sort of subcommittee. Wendy?
Yeah, I think if the board, each board
Yeah,
assigns
I
one
can talk right now.
person, and we have Katrina and Angus, that would be a good start. I think we would be much more nimble to try to flesh out some of these questions and then report back to our boards. I think that could be an efficient way to do this without having to wait every 2 weeks, you know, to make progress.
My only concern about this is that I think every member of this board has valuable input.
Of course. But couldn't they give that to one person instead of being part of every single meeting?
Only
And
at
now my
meetings.
only hesitancy is that stuff is being done in the background that people they can't sit in on.
Hmm.
These are just my concerns.
Yep. Yeah.
Other planning board members?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure we'd have a game plan. We have 3 months, basically. I mean, that puts us in early September when we start talking about when's a public hearing for this, whatever we come up with. So it's quick. It's going to come up quick.
Mhm.
And nobody else, oh, wait a minute.
So
I have a question too, if I could.
just
Bring it.
All
a
right,
moment,
I
please.
haven't
Yeah.
forgotten about
Okay.
Devin. I see
Yeah.
you, Pete Conrad.
Brian, what were you saying?
I mean, if we appoint one person to liaise with a select person and Angus and Katrina, that's fine. That one person, without getting into, you know, open meeting violations,
Right.
you know, yeah, they could report back individually. You know, these public hearings are helpful for us, for me, and certainly to keep the public interest, and I'm sensitive to that. I mean, I think it's great that people are tuned in and listening, and I think really educated. There's probably still some misconceptions and whatnot, but I think many people have a better understanding of what the legislation is and the risks to the town. So I'm willing to listen about how this subcommittee would work, but know that it will have to be discussed at every single planning board meeting.
And I'd also point out that I've laid out some specific questions to be answered here that move us forward.
Mhm.
Yes.
I promised Devin
Yeah,
to hear from him and P. Conrad. Is that all right with people?
Sure.
Okay, Devin, what do you got for us real quick?
Yes, actually, it's Kevin at 5 Merrill Street, West Newbury.
Very good, sir. Go right ahead.
First, I just want to say, I find it very disingenuous from the last guy saying that we were putting out false information. We weren't. We were very honest, very upfront with the information that we gave everybody. Second, I find it also disingenuous that NAPS was voted down and you guys are still gearing up to throw NAPS back on. I would talk to your legal team before you did that. Third, I would recommend that Wendy and the select board take this over. You guys have fumbled it so bad. Thank you.
Okay. I'd be interested to know specifically how we fumbled things, Kevin. So that we could avoid those.
Nobody had any information. Nobody talked to us. Everybody's calling us liars. Everybody's telling us that we are giving false information. You guys just don't want to listen to us. And you're showing that today by throwing that back on the table. I would give it the legal team before you do that.
It
Yeah,
should be
Kevin-
back on the table, sir, because
It's disingenuous.
if you heard before,
You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose half your town.
if Mr. Sarkis buys the property,
All right, wait a second. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead,
if
Brian.
Mr. Sarkis purchases the property, he's going to do a couple things. He'll either build it out under a subdivision, you'll have virtually no say in how it looks, and actually you'll have no say in how it looks. Or he'll do a 40B apartment buildings, in which case you'll have no say in how it looks. So we want to make sure you understand what you're balancing if Mr. Sarkis buys it.
Right, and if he does, it'll also be under the planning boards and our rules, not theirs or the state's. He has to abide by our rules.
What rules are those?
How it is done.
What rules are those, sir?
Whatever the planning board rules are, the regulations for the.
Well, you need to read them. The subdivision rules only govern the layout of the street and the lots. He can do whatever he wants.
So,
And let him do whatever he wants.
so, Kevin, I'll just point out that one of the first questions
You
I
guys
asked.
are standing here making fun of us, looking at us like we're a joke and telling us we're liars.
Nobody on the planning board said that you were a liar, Kevin. Nobody did.
No.
And my first question tonight was whether or not we could bring it back to the town legally, and we got that answer. And the other thing is, in the fall, it's not the same as it was in the spring, because in the fall, we have more information. Did Mr. Sarkis buy the land or did he not? If somebody else buys the land, this was a question that people didn't know the answer to coming into the Springtown meeting.
You're gonna lose the vote. Do what you want. You
Excuse
guys
me?
do. And the town knows it.
I didn't hear you, but I think we got the gist of your input. But if you ever want to give us more input, you can do that by coming to another planning board meeting. You can also write a letter to Katrina, the town planner, and then that can be made part of the public record. So we could have it in writing. You could have it, make sure that you got things worded exactly how you wanted. And that could become part of the public record as well. And, we're listening, Kevin. I want to go.
Every planning board meeting and you guys are not listening.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to, Kevin. P. Conrad, you wanted to say something?
Sure, this is Perry Conrad, 7 Merrill Street. So little concerned with this, the way this meeting's gone and how it started, because one, again, you're bringing up NAPT again, and again, this is something that just a week ago, not even a week ago, the town voted against. So we, the voters, you came to us, the voters, for approval, and we said no. We gave you gave all the information to the voters. We did the same. We rebutted it. The town said no. Okay. This is the exact same thing. And now you insult us to come back to say, bring that to the table. And you say you have the approval. You have the approval from Angus. You haven't gone to your legal team. And on top of that, we'll go to our legal team as well to find out why you're pushing NAPS again, because you're really going on a thin line here with continuing to push this with Sarkis. From day one, you've been asking how you should vote on certain acts, asking if you can ask the builder, how you could vote. Okay, that's really unethical. And on top of that, here again, you push it again, not even a couple days after this. Okay, so that's really insulting on that to the town. Okay, for all the people who spent time and effort coming to the town meeting to vote on this, and now you go, and we're not the squeaky wheel, as it was said. Okay, we were very informed to the point you didn't even know if it could go over another overlay on this meeting. And again, So if you really look at it, you talked about Middleton, you talked about Beverly, we talked about North Andover. It went over the market basket in the Amazon over at market in North Andover. They approved it. The state approved it. Even Maura Healy said months ago that it's okay if it's buildable and not available. She said that. She already came back and confirmed that. That was from her words specifically. Now you just keep saying, well, is it feasible? Is it this? Is it doable? Well, you looked at those options with taking a look at Knapp's versus Dunn's. You said in the February meeting that was apples to apples. That was your words, your team's words, apples to apples. You didn't go with Dunn's because Dunn's, the individual who owns it doesn't want to sell it. Okay, so that's buildable but not available. Okay, so that was an option. You keep looking to have this built. So you keep looking to say, let's put it back at Knapp's.
Mr. Conrad,
yes.
I'm going to have to cut you off there because you're assuming a lot that is not necessarily true. We chose Knapp's not for the reason
the street part, right? The right of way on the street. I heard that, but you did claim it was apples to apples. And the way it was worded on the February meeting, you said we'll go with Knapp's because it's buildable and it's going to be built.
Mr. Conrad, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to. They're very similar properties. We took a look at a lot of criteria. We chose Knapp's for a lot of reasons as the best property to bring before the town. Now what we're talking about is coming back before the town with options. And before we can come back with an option, for example, to put it over Drake's Landing, we have to be very sure that the state would accept it. Before we come back to the town with Knapp's property, at the very beginning of this meeting, I want to know whether legally we can do it. And the answer, with no question in their responses, was that legally we can. Obviously, we're not going to do anything that's not legal. The situation would be different if we come back in the fall because we'll have more information about whether or not the property was bought by a developer and whether or not the developer intends to develop it. And you know, if there are several options that come back before the town, and I don't see how this is disingenuous.
Well, it's disingenuous because you even at the town meeting, you didn't even bring up the option of buildable but not available. I had to bring that up. So that's where you're not giving the information. You are so biased to build. That's where it is. You are because you could have put an overlay over an existing area and you're not willing to, even though I think it's Katrina even says it's possible to go over Drake's. I'm not saying Drake's is where it should go.
I gotta cut you off because
but you're going to divide the town to 4 different ways here. You already divided it half, and now you're going to do it 4 ways in the next coming months. That's not right.
I gotta cut you off, Mr. Conrad, because you're saying things that just are not true.
Oh, what did I say was untrue?
You're saying that we never considered putting it on Dunn's because it's not likely to be buildable, and you're saying that
that was in the February meeting. It's recorded.
You're saying that we're doing everything because we want it to be built because we have some relationship with Mr. Sarkis.
You do. Many of you have been on the board with him for many, many years. 3 of you have.
We know Mr. Sarkis, but that's not why we chose Knapp's. And
But then you did. Even Deb asked the question, how should I vote? How should I vote was her question.
You're accusing us of being corrupt, sir.
I'm not being corrupt. I'm saying you're just so biased. You don't understand how biased you are, Ben.
And you're saying that we didn't consider Dunn? We did consider Dunn? You're saying that we didn't consider putting it over a developable area? We did consider putting it over a developable area. And I told you this.
But you keep going back to your own bias that you want to build.
Other people were disappointed with me when I was frank by telling that I believe the state would accept it if we put it over a developable area. And that was during our information sessions. And I had you stand up and I said, I don't want you to sit down until you've had every one of your concerns addressed. I tried to show you a great deal of respect, but tonight you are not showing us.
I'm showing you respect.
No, because you're accusing us of being biased and corrupt. And
but I'm not saying corrupt. I'm saying you're being biased. Absolutely biased.
by saying that we're in bed with Mr. Sarkis.
I'm not saying you're in bed with him. I'm saying you're biased in that you have a longstanding, he's a longstanding colleague of yours, and you said in the February meeting between Dunn's and Knapp's, you say they're apples to apples, and the reason we would go with Knapp's is because we have a builder who's ready to start building. And that was, go back to the February meeting, and that's what is exactly stated. That was that's where we are. But I think
All right.
I
Well,
think it's bad that you're
even
coming
though
back
this
to
is-
this.
Even though
And
this is
you
not a,
disregarded the vote of the town, not the vote of the street or the vote of myself or others, but of the town. And that's
This
why
is-
it goes to the town.
Mr.
So
Chair, could I suggest that
Thank you.
at future meetings, when we have members of the public there, limit the amount of time they speak if they would like
That's fine.
to send a statement beforehand so that all members could read it, because I think the board has some important work to do right now. And I feel like if you let everyone speak, you're not going to be able to do that important work.
well, I was just gonna say, Katrina, that this is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. And it's always been our tradition when people show up at a public meeting, even though it's not part of the requirement that we listen to people, I promise people that it's our tradition. We listen to people. And,
Okay,
and
let's move on.
I appreciate the fact that we got input from Kevin and Mr. Conrad and Mr. George. And yeah, it's time to move on. We've got specific questions that I've laid out that we're gonna look into. Katrina's gonna look into it. Angus is gonna look into it. Let's get legal confirmation about whether or not, even though you're absolutely sure we can bring it back if the planning board thinks that it's still the best option for the town or a viable option for the town. Let's make sure we have legal confirmation, because let's have a lawyer tell us that we could come back to the town meeting with the Knapp property proposal, having more information in between the two meetings, or not. Let's get that from a lawyer. And, I look forward to somebody else being the chair during all this fun time stuff. Rob, it looks like you were about to say something.
Again, I apologize if this breaks up. We have a meeting in 2 weeks. Again, I would ask that Katrina, Angus, a planning board member and a select board member sit down, try to distill where we're at and what the paths forward are. I think they've heard everything they need to hear to take this up. And then in 2 weeks, we would have the ability to review what they've worked up for us. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Rob. My only question to you, sir, and I believe that I acknowledge that Mr. Conrad has me upset, but I want you to be more specific than that, than just saying a path forward. What specific questions do we need answered at this time? My specific questions were on coming back to the town with multiple things, about the, overlaying it on the business district, about overlaying it on Drake's. And these are specific questions that help us move forward. And if the select board has specific questions for us, but instead of just sort of a vague, how do we move forward?
Once you involve our town planner and our town manager, a select board member and a planning board member in this, nothing will be vague when they report back to us. Thank you.
Ann,
Hey, can I suggest that maybe yes, we have a time limit, but maybe an intermediate step would be to get the answers to your 3 specific HLC/legal questions for the next planning board meeting. Once we have the answers to those questions, perhaps then a subcommittee would have a more focused agenda for going forward. I don't think they're going to come up with much. I mean, again, yeah, I understand. What else would the subcommittee be doing if these legal questions are unanswered? I think they
Thank
need
you,
to be
Ann.
answered first. So I support your idea.
Wendy Reed, if I may be so bold as to ask you, at this point, is there any specific question or procedure or piece of property that the select board has? And are you in any way frustrated by what the planning board has done or what we hope to do in the next 2 months? Is there anything bubbling under over on the select board that we here tonight on the planning board need to hear?
Well, we haven't just discussed it. I mean, we wanted you to give you a chance as a board to discuss it. I think the select board needs to discuss it, but I do think we need to have some kind of path forward, meaning who's going to take the reins, drive the bus, whatever metaphor you want to use. You know, before we start spending a lot of money on legal questions, I think we need to have a plan. I don't want to just start throwing money around until it's whoever is driving this knows the path forward. And
Well, but just
Well-
even the question about who's driving this indicates to me that the select board thinks that the planning board has not been proceeding properly, that it would be more efficient by perhaps the select board driving it. And that's fine.
the
And
conversation we should have, I think, and not necessarily because you haven't been driving properly, but we need a clear break now because what we've done up until now has not worked. And so I think it's worth all of us taking a step back, figuring out, you know, what the best chance of success for the town is.
I like that idea because the planning board still is going to be the one holding the public hearing and making last revisions.
I'm not so sure, Katrina. I'm not so sure. My impression this spring is that the select board has not been satisfied with what the planning board has been doing, as indicated, for example, by the way the specific language of the proposal was put onto the town warrant. That was not our decision, and the language that went into the town warrant was not what the planning board had decided to put in the town warrant. And then I was told that the town warrant language had to be the language that the motion was made on, that it was not possible for us to make a motion that was different from what was printed in the town warrant. So I am no longer sure that it's the opinion of the select board that the planning board is the one proposing the MICMOD. And again, I don't care. I want the best for the town, and I want the best chance of success in the fall. What I don't want is for us to get involved in backroom discussions about who should be doing what. Now, what I want doesn't really matter because I'll be stepping away from the chair position. And we've got a new member on the planning board, and I have great respect for everybody in this meeting here tonight. I have a tremendous respect for you and for Angus and for Wendy Reed and the other select board members. But Wendy, I disagree. The questions that I ask for legal opinion on are relevant. And no matter who's driving the bus going forward, no matter what happens before fall, I don't see any way that it's a waste of money to get legal confirmation that NAPs can be brought back or not. I don't see how delaying that saves the town any money. And as we can see from
Ray?
input, yes?
Right, that I think just on that question, it's a very elementary question for a planner. And I think that's why, I mean, town council costs an awful lot of money. And so to send that just hurts, I think, to anyone watching the pennies. And it's an elementary question whether or not it can come back to town meeting.
I understand that, Katrina, but as we witnessed tonight, people don't have faith in what we say. And you know, you've got Mr. Conrad here who doesn't trust us. And Mr. Conrad wants a legal answer to that question. And I think it's quite understandable that people, the abutters to the Knapp property, are going to be very upset if this comes back again in the fall. And I think we need, and you know what, I'll stand back. I don't know, Brian, Ann, Wendy, Angus, Rob, is it a waste of money to get a lawyer to weigh in on this very basic question? I picture this being 15 minutes of work tops for a lawyer to answer this. But then we can go back to Mr. Conrad and say, yeah, it's not a biased town planner. It's not a biased member of the town that knows Mr. Sarkis. The lawyers have weighed in and they say, yep, you can bring it back. Angus, I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me the question that Mr. Conrad has posed is not a legal question. It's really, he's getting at the ethical concerns that he's.
But he did ask whether or not
insinuating.
legally we can come back in the fall.
From a legal standpoint, it's, you know, I mean, we could pull the law book. Like it's not a question. You can bring back a zoning article within 2 years if the planning board favorably recommends it. There's no ambiguity to that. I think what I heard in Mr. Conrad's question was an insinuation that there was some other factors as to why the planning board might want to do that. That's not a legal issue.
Well, I think Mr. Conrad has a lot of different concerns, but maybe I heard them. Brian and Deb, Rob. Nobody wants to say anything.
I was going to say, Ray, these aren't the only questions. And I think that you have had Katrina, our planner, Angus, our town manager, hear most every question wherever it came from. Myself, I've barely been elected, so no, I haven't formulated a whole bunch of, I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I haven't put them together, not knowing the direction of this meeting. Again, I really think that in the next 2 weeks, a few people should transcribe what the issues may be, what they've heard, what the possible paths forward. I haven't heard some of the ideas I've had mentioned at all, but I'm not ready to chip in right now because, as I say, I'm on vacation in Portland and I'm anxious to get to that Gruner bottle that's in the refrigerator. So anyway,
God, I
guys,
wish I had
I'll
one in
back
my
off right
fridge,
now.
Rob.
Thank you all for your time.
There you go.
Look
Right.
forward to working with you on this and other things.
Yeah.
Right. I think I share some of your perplexity about this driving the bus thing. Seems to me if the select board and the town manager have questions or issues, they should bring them to the planning board to be answered. I have a little, makes me squirm a little bit to have these subcommittees and I don't know. It feels funny to me. I don't quite know what the motivation is there. You know, if it seems to me if they've got some advice for us, we should be given their advice.
I would love it if the select board were to prepare a little document and I would welcome any constructive criticisms. I would welcome anything or a clear statement that the select board wants to take the ball from here.
Right.
And then
And
we
the reason the planning board managed this to begin with is because we have always handled zoning articles and
Right.
things to do with land use.
Yeah.
And okay, this is townwide, but every zoning article is townwide. You know, this is not, yes, this has financial implications, but all zoning articles have financial implications. So yeah, if this is a criticism of our ability to handle it, I would like to just hear their proposal.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Let Angus, Katrina, Wendy get together and perhaps bring some of those questions forth at the next meeting. I am not going to be attending the next meeting, but I'd be interested. I'll certainly listen to the audio and whatnot once I return. And perhaps Rob's idea has merit, but I think let's wait till the next meeting and perhaps I trust you folks to discuss it ably if you agree that there should be a appointee.
Would it be okay?
I'm concerned about, we got a lot of people here listening and I've always wanted to try to be above board and with the information that we had about MBTA and getting it out to people and whatnot. And, I think I second your concern, Ann, about, the subcommittee, people won't know what's happening or something. Maybe that'll be answered next week. So I'll leave you to that.
I mean, in 2 weeks. Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks and discuss it. And if if the four of you decide that that's the best approach, I fully support it.
Rob?
I just would ask then, since obviously you guys have all, including the select board and town manager, but you've all been involved in this much more than I have to date. If Katrina and Angus and Wendy do get together to kind of recap where they think we might be at and what the path might be forward, would you be okay with me joining them? This is going to be the quickest path to my learning what I need to know about this issue.
Yes.
I really would rather have it handled in a meeting where everyone's present.
Well, I just thought we agreed that they're going to get together. Katrina, Angus, and
Well,
Wendy.
they're going to get together, but we didn't say a
Yeah.
planning board member was going to get together.
No,
But I'd rather,
that's what I'm asking.
Rob was asking if he could be the planning board representative to a
No,
subcommittee.
I don't want to be a
No.
representative. I want to be involved in the
I-
discussions
I-
they have.
I
So I
think
can
that's pre-
understand what the background is to this matter.
I think it's premature.
yeah, I
I
think we
think-
need to wait till the 20th.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to have side meetings. It's just not the way we've ever operated.
Well, I think, of course, Katrina is town planner and.
Yes, that's different. That's staff, sure. of course.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. And
They
I,
have been doing that anyway, all along. So that's
as they
normal.
should,
That's normal, yeah.
as they should. And I reiterate my respect for our select board, despite frustrations I might have from time to time. And I would welcome any direction, suggestions, comments, anything along those lines from the select board for our next meeting. And again, in my opinion, this should be the planning board carrying this to the fall town meeting. But at this point, I'm like, if the select board wants to take it from here on out, then the select board can do it. Or I think a better approach would be to be parliamentary on this and going back and forth. But whatever it is, I do agree with whoever it was who said it. I think it was Wendy. I think we need to be very clear about who's doing what and who's responsible for what. Whether it be one board, the other board, or some sort of parliamentary thing. Because, yeah. I see that there's something in the chat.
Yeah, I read that. It looks to
Yeah,
me-
actually, Ray, I could address that. It's citing general law regarding reversal of prior town meeting actions. I'm just going to read one sentence from Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, which is the Zoning Act. No proposed zoning ordinance or bylaw which has been unfavorably acted upon by a town meeting shall be considered by the town meeting within 2 years after the date of such unfavorable action, unless the adoption of such proposed bylaw is recommended by the planning board. So basically,
Okay, so they
exactly what we
specifically,
said.
they specifically call out the planning board as the entity that can bring it back.
Not that can bring it back. The planning
It
board
can
has to have
recommend.
a public hearing on all proposed zoning amendments.
Right.
Either the planning board or the select board or citizen petition has the right to initiate a zoning bylaw, but whoever.
Right, and then the
initiates it,
select
planning
board has
have a
to,
hearing.
the select board has to refer it to the planning board.
Correct.
Correct. But specifically about this reversal of prior actions or whatever it is.
No, that's a different matter. That would have been reconsideration within a meeting. This is different.
Okay, but I'm just confirming what Angus just said here is that we have to wait 2 years unless, what's the language again, Angus?
Unless the adoption of such proposed ordinance or bylaw is recommended in the final report of the planning board. And that's the report that you give after the, after your public hearing. I just put it in the chat, including the link, so.
Right. We recommended it this time. We would
Right.
recommend.
And
And
if
the-
they had
what
a
would-
negative recommendation, you would have to wait 2 years before bringing it back.
Right.
Very good.
Exactly.
So there you go. And for Mr. Conrad, who's probably, no, he's still here. Mr. Conrad, there's a link there, and I bet if you click the link, you can go to that section of law and read it for yourself. So that
Still,
you
it's
know that,
insulting to the voters. So whether it's legal or not to bring it back, the town voted to come back a couple days later with your still being stubborn to not move forward with it. It's kind of insulting to the town. Thank you.
understood, point taken, Mr. Conrad.
Not right, though.
Um,
Okay, so we'll talk about this on the 20th.
yes. And
And
then
in the
since,
meantime, we'll-
since Brian won't be in the room on the 20th, I suggest, and I think it's pretty much what we've always done anyway, as far as reorganizing the officers of the planning board, that take place in the first meeting of June.
We generally do, yeah.
That's usually what we do, yeah.
That's usually what we do, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
And that gives Rob some more time to get up to speed and get back.
Thank you, Ray.
Absolutely, Rob. And again, Wendy, please, let us know what you think we can do better. Let us know what your concerns are. Won't take any constructive criticism personally. As just one member of the planning board, soon not to be chair any longer. Again, what I want is what's best for the town, and I am absolutely certain, as I'm sure you are, what's best for the town is that we comply with the MBTA zoning requirements in one way or another, and that we have success this fall. That's what I want. And I think the idea of having multiple options bring before the town, I heard people in town, that's what they wanted. I think even Mr. Conrad wanted us to have multiple options brought before the town.
Just don't
Anybody else?
divide the town, because you will be doing that too.
Can we move on? The
Any
agenda?
other planning board members want to say anything before we move on?
Nope.
No.
Okay, so I want to promise everybody who's here with us now, we will not talk anymore about MBTA zoning. If you want to leave us, you can. If you want to hang out, hear more, you're more than welcome to do that. Last item on the agenda is general business. Would anybody object if we postponed reading through the minutes until the next meeting?
So moved.
All right, so we'll skip that. Any riveting correspondence for us, Katrina?
I wouldn't call it riveting, but there are several notices from different towns. Did everyone get a chance to read through them?
I saw it in the package and I gotta be honest with you, I didn't read through them.
Okay, Merrimack had a public hearing to adopt a floodplain district and battery energy storage system. Sounds familiar.
does.
There you go.
Newburyport was revising their sign ordinance. The town of Newbury just received their first application for their newly adopted McMod overlay district. And then there was a 4 residential units, a permit application for Plum Island in Newbury. I also wanted to let the board know that tomorrow I'm sending out some revisions to the housing production plan. The state received it. They wanted us to make a couple changes. The Merrimack Valley Planning Council has looked through it, made some changes. Angus has also, I haven't even looked at it truthfully, has looked through it and made some edits. So I'm going to be sending that out to everyone, and I can put it on a future agenda so that we can discuss those changes fully.
Thank you. Any administrative details?
No, and we are expecting 0 Middle Street to be submitted probably by the end of this week. I know the board likes to view it before a public hearing is set, but that doesn't really work with legal ads. So if we get it at the end of this week, we will put it in the paper for a June 3rd public hearing, but the planning board can actually review the application at their May 15th meeting before the public hearing opens, if that's okay with everyone.
Let's do that. Let's put that on the agenda.
Sounds like we may be busy. We have Pleasant Street public hearing then too.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Okay.
Yep,
And that's it.
okay. So I think we've covered the placement of items for future planning board agendas. And I don't have any items that weren't reasonably anticipated. Does anybody else have any items they want to bring up that weren't reasonably anticipated?
No.
Nope.
I actually had been anticipating that Rob Phillips would have been sworn in at 8:30 last night, but I guess I was wrong.
I'm up in Portland.
Yeah, too bad.
No.
Portland, Maine.
Yeah, right. I should be clearer. Yes, Portland, Maine.
All right, all
Home
right.
tomorrow morning.
There's a diner I love in Portland, Maine.
Becky's.
There's a lot of good places up in Portland, Maine.
Oh, yeah.
All right, then. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, good.
All right. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye. Terrific.
Ann?
Aye, sorry.
All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you.